And run.
Is that too far?
It's not. Can they hear? Can we tell if they can hear?
It should be. But you seem too far. Oops.
Okay, that's close enough.
That's nice.
That's close enough. Okay, ACI 17 class 7. So, you know that we're doing 2 classes per course as a review, right? So we have finished our walk through the realms of existence. Death and the realms of existence. Did everyone remember that death awareness meditation we did the last time? Great. So, we're moving on to ACI 9, which is the course on vowed morality. And it's Vinaya in Sanskrit. Vinaya, you know, when you hear of Vinaya, most people think about, if they've studied Buddhism at all, they think of the monastic vows, and they're certainly contained within them. But Vinaya basically just means discipline or training. And it really is about taming, hey Wesley, come on in. It is really about taming our natural inclinations. So, see, Vinaya presumes that this whole practice, and it's not even just Buddhism. If you look at any authentic spiritual lineage, they all at their foundation have some sense of discipline, ethics, morality, as the foundation, right? As the thing that grounds. They may deliver that message in different ways and through different practices, but the general assumption of all of that is that we are somehow miswired, that we need training, that our inclinations, our instincts are wrong. And you know, I think on some level we might have resistance to classic religion or spirituality because we don't want to be disciplined and we don't buy into this completely. But, you know, let's just consider our instincts, our natural instincts, the untrained instincts, the things that instantly arise. And one thing you can do is observe children. Now, there are the rare exceptions, and I have to say I'm pretty blessed with seeing this more often than I think is normal, where children are, I know a couple of kids in particular who are pretty angelic, who are very altruistic in their natural motivation. But I also work at a center that has a lot of little kids running around for most of the time in a language school. And I gotta tell you, when you observe these kids left to their own natural instincts, they're all pretty selfish and easy to anger and easy to emote, and they want what's theirs and they do not want to share their toys. Now, you know, we've been learning a lot about cause and effect and karma and all of that, and of course everything is in the nexus of karma. But I'm trying to get you to think about this whole idea of our instincts being not naturally or naturally our instincts being somehow completely wrong, and why we need training, why we need to be trained. Because even with children, you know, you need to teach them to share for the most part. Of course, there are exceptions, because it is all in the nexus of karma. I've seen this one, I don't remember the name of the film, but there's a gorgeous film on His Holiness and of discovering him as a child, and they show a scene where he's playing with other children, other boys, and these other boys are basically smashing bugs. And they're getting great thrill out of this. They're not even really thinking about what they're doing. They're using bugs instead of little what are those, war toy soldiers or something, right? But the little child Dalai Lama is away from the group of boys smashing bugs, and he's by a stone wall and he's observing this beetle, and he's really just fascinated with this beetle that happens to fall on its back, and he writes it. or something like that, and it's really just, and there's very little dialogue other than these boys having a riotous time smashing bugs, and this little child who hasn't yet been identified as His Holiness, but the whole movie's about him, right? And this one scene, it's like a short scene where you can see the inborn altruism in this being, right? But that's not normal. Like normally what you see are the other, activities, just normally. So, and even when we grow up, we're not so good at sharing our toys, are we? So, we have to train kids to not hit each other when they're angry, right? We have to train ourselves how to live morally, how to live properly. And I remember when I first heard this from Geshe, it's not about Vinaya and vowed morality is not, the goal is actually not to be a nicer person, believe it or not. That happens to be a very lovely byproduct of what happens. The goal of vowed morality is to be a happier person, because that's the real cause of happiness for you. And it's interesting in terms of spirituality, back to the fundamental yogic principles. We've got for those of you yogis in the room, we've got the yamas and niyamas, right? We've got the discipline, the restraint. The yamas come first. And in modern psychology, which I personally haven't studied a lot of other than first year university, maybe the rest of you have studied more. Sigmund Freud, you guys studied much of that? Well, he very famously identified the id, the superego, the ego, and the id. And the id is quite frankly amoral. And left to our own defenses, our natural inclinations, our natural instincts, we're basically quite amoral, and we need, Freud identified as the superego, to control the id. Vinaya is your superego, okay? And it's the check. It's what keeps you in check. It's the restraint on our amoral or immoral inclinations. And, this is an inborn habit. So don't get too down on yourself. But if you're thinking, oh, no, I'm not amoral. I'm a perfectly moral person. Well, you know what? Quite frankly, none of us would be here right now if we hadn't been amoral for countless lives. Okay, we would be out of here. So it's these natural-born inclinations, these natural-born negative habits that we need to relearn. So Lamaji says you can look at your instincts in two ways. One, you can't trust your instincts because most likely they are completely wrong. Or you can absolutely trust your instincts to be wrong. Those are two ways you can look at them, he says. So if you're wondering what to do in any given situation, get that natural feeling that arises and do the opposite most of the time. Most of the time. Unless you've had some training and you've been practicing this, okay? I was in a meeting, was it last week? God, the time just flies by. But I was in a board meeting at work, and it was a heavy-duty meeting because we were talking fairly serious things to do with the financial situation and the upcoming budget. And we've had a bit of transition in management, and I was the acting executive director here. So at the end of my acting executive ED term overlapped with the new person coming in, and I had to, I was asked to, and I happily agreed to do the basics of building the new budget, which is no small feat for an organization, a nonprofit organization of this size. And so I did what you would call the heavy lifting on this. And the good news is at this board meeting, the budget got passed. And all the accolades are being, passed around about everybody who helped. And they didn't acknowledge me at first, okay? And it was interesting just to watch the inner, right? Just to watch it. But I am an educated, I am a semi-educated Buddhist. So I watched it with fascination as that feeling arose of, what about me? But I didn't, because I did. I sat there and I thought, this is perfect. I'm teaching this stuff, right? Like, how better to actually viscerally tell you that this stuff, this inborn tendency, I've been practicing for a little while, and it definitely arose. Now, interestingly enough, because I do know this, I trusted my instinct to be 100% wrong, and I didn't say anything other than applauding the people who were being recognized and acknowledged. And then I felt that grip release, because it feels like a grip on your heart when that that what about me feeling comes up, or that defensiveness, or that it's a form of anger, actually, right? Sort of self-righteous indignation. It feels like a grip. It's a closing of the heart chakra. And when I just stopped, and first of all, I did have that inner laugh. You do that a lot as a semi-educated Buddhist, when you start thinking, right, this is the practice, right? Not that 20 minutes or so on the cushion. This is the practice. Here it is. Okay, like showtime. And as I'm sitting there listening and thinking, no, this is perfect. As soon as I had that thought, this is perfect, that grip released, the attachment melted, and I thought we were moving on, and then suddenly the compliments completely were being showered on me. And actually at that point, it was almost like, what? But again, then there's the danger of, and we're not getting it into this course, but have you heard of the 8 worldly thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then that was the second thought of, right. So of course you like it when people speak well of you, or praise you, or think highly of you, or that you're well known, right? And so it was, again, not following the instinct of going, yeah, and just letting it pass, letting that moment pass. But anyways, that's just a little off-roading there. But like that, right, it can come up at any moment just in your normal day, and that is when you practice. That is the practice. So, Vinaya, in Tibetan, it's dulwa, and dulwa is a word for reining in a horse. So it's a type of restraint. It quite literally is a yoga on your actions. Yoga is to yoke, right? To restrain or discipline. It's a practice. Reining in your natural inclinations and reprogramming your channels. And we do have to do it over and over and over again. And every spiritual tradition has some form of this. You've heard Lamaji say this before, right? I'm sure you have, that spiritual traditions are in the business of producing happy people. That's what their purpose is. And the thing is, this goal of unflawed, perfect happiness. Sometimes you hear the words ecstasy or bliss. We can spout those words off all we want, but we really don't know what that means. Not in this realm. Because in this realm, we're actually attached to our suffering. We're actually so habituated to low-grade suffering that we don't even know we're suffering half the time. Especially if we live in a semi-deva realm like Vancouver, where life is actually pretty damn good most of the time. Right? Remember that walk through the realms, the last 2 classes, where if life is too quote-unquote good, then we're not motivated, right? But think about the best day you've ever had, or the best moment. And think about what would that feeling be if it was magnified 1,000 times, or 100,000 times. Like, can you actually even imagine it? And lasting, right? But that's what we're aiming for. That's the type of happiness we're aiming for. So then the question is, well, how do I get to that goal? Here I am, a good little ACI student in Dharma class, trying to figure this out, right? How am I going to achieve that? Well, you know what? You already know the answer. You achieve that goal by helping others achieve that goal. But see, you can't really help other people achieve that goal until you achieve that goal. But you achieve that goal, you reach it by trying to help others reach that goal. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
So another way to say that is the way to achieve happiness, to achieve your happiness, is try to help others achieve their happiness. And the more that you achieve happiness by trying to help others achieve happiness, the better you'll be able to help others achieve happiness. Yeah. I see a lot of nodding. That's good. That basically is the summary of any spiritual life, right there. That's it. Okay, we could go now. Oh, maybe not. I've got a few more pages to share with you. Well, here's another way to look at it. The method, the way to get more happy is to stop creating the causes for pain. Because you cannot be suffering and happy at the same moment. It's actually impossible. But see, we're so used to being low-grade unhappy that we are attached to it. Lamaji calls us masochists in denial. We say we want to be happy. We think we want to be happy, right? Anybody in this room think they don't want to be happy? But we're attached to our unhappy lives or the unhappiness in our life. We find it very difficult to let go of our habits that have created our lives that we have right now. A really good example of that is, I don't know if you've ever experienced this yourself or if you know of people in your life like this, but anyone who can't forgive a wrong that's been done to them. I had a very real example of this in my life with someone in my life where they were very upset about someone else. But the problem wasn't what this person did or didn't do. The problem here was my friend's inability to let go of the anger. To hold on to it. And as they were talking, I got this distinct impression that they were actually quite enjoying. They were kind of relishing their suffering. It was a weird, and they didn't even know they were doing it. And the reason I say I had observed it seemed that way to me is because the more they talked about it, the more animated they became, and the more energized. Like they were getting off on this anger, right? And basically, the end of that little vignette is that we had a little chat about how this anger was not hurting anyone except my friend, because they were getting themselves more upset as they were talking about it, right? But it's like that. We hold on to our anger, and the initial hurt wasn't even in the room, right? And yet they were burning themselves over and over and over by refusing to let go of the coal. That's what Master Shantideva says. Just let go of the coal. No, it's my coal. Don't make me let go, right? Yeah. It's a resistance. That's a really interesting energy to watch for. As you're observing your ripenings of emotion, look for the resistance, because it's a really good indicator. It's a really good marker of where we can shine the light. Because that's how you dispel darkness, is you shine the light of your wisdom on it. You shine the light of your awareness on it. And just let me finish this anger bit. I just want to finish this part by saying, I started by saying you can't be unhappy and happy at the same time, right? To hold those thoughts. And our attachment to suffering. So you can't hold anger and resentment at someone and be happy. You can't. And yet we're often, like my friend was reluctant to let go of the thing that was preventing them from being happy in that moment. And that's the perversion. That's the Yoga Chittavritti Nirodha is that perversion. That's what, last time I explained it by saying our minds turn things around by seeing things as coming at them and not from them, right? Well, this is another way we turn it around, by thinking that holding on to our anger is going to somehow make us happy. And it can't. It's impossible. We have to let go of that. We have to really, it's what Lamaji refers to as terminal dukkha. Do you guys know what dukkha is? That's another Sanskrit word for suffering. We all have a really bad case of dukkha. And that's your real enemy. That is the real evil. You know, we were talking about the hell realms. We never did talk about the devil, did we? If you want to find the devil, you don't actually have to go very far. Just do an inner scan and see the part of you that is resisting happiness. That's why I said watch for that resistance. Because when we have resistance, we don't think about it as resisting happiness. We think about it as a resistance that comes up as a defensiveness, or hey, wait a minute, I did that report. You know, it's like we see that resistance come up. No, that resistance is a resistance against your own happiness. Yes, Leonardo?
Oh, all I was thinking was, when you were talking, was the movie Groundhog Day.
Over and over and over?
Over and over, take it a little bit further.
Yeah.
I've been feeling like the first day over and over, okay, I'm going to have a chance to try this again and move on, and then go a bit further. This is it.
Have you seen that other movie, the more recent one with Jake Gyllenhaal, that had the similar, where something was repeated over and over and over?
What was the movie?
He was what was the movie? He was a soldier who was basically all but brain dead. And but you don't know that. I just spoiled the movie for everyone.
I want to watch it. Spoiler alert.
But it's a really good Dharma movie, actually, if I could remember it. But he's basically hooked up to a computer program. So it's not that he doesn't know he's replaying the moment over and over and over. He's hooked up to a computer program where he gets to go in and replay these. It's only like 2 minutes or 5 minutes before a major terrorist event happens and this train blows up. But he goes back and he keeps trying to find, because he's a soldier and he's on a mission to find out who's setting this. Do you know the name of the movie, Wesley?
No, I remember the trailer.
Yeah, but actually the movie is awesome. Okay, I'll Google it and email it out to you, and you can send it to the rest of them.
Who's the author? I mean, the actor.
The actor is Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah. But Groundhog Day reminded me of that, but Groundhog Day is a comedy. This is definitely not a comedy. But it's interesting about how repeating something over and over and over, but with the awareness that you're trying to change things, right? That's the difference. Just like the actor in Groundhog Day. He knows he's repeating himself, and then, well, once he catches on, it takes him a while, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And then
he finally gets the girl. He finally gets the girl.
But it takes him a while to figure out that he can actually do something with this situation he's in. So that's kind of like where we're at, right? Yeah.
Same chances for the same thing.
So, you know, I said that devil inside is where we resist happiness. But here's another one. And this is actually probably more relevant to all of you who are Dharma. This is the Dharma student devil. This is the one where something says it's selfish to be happy. Because I just said the goal is to be happy, right? But it's something inside that thinks, oh, that's so selfish. I'm supposed to be looking after the happiness of others, and yet I'm supposed to look after my own happiness in order. Like, you know, there's this. It usually happens at the beginning where that feeling pops up about, what do you mean I'm supposed to be looking after my own happiness? You know, and we feel selfish. That feeling of selfishness is a devil. Now, that's not to say that we should just, you know,
Indulge.
well, no, it's not even that. That whole unmitigated, like, do whatever you want, find your bliss in whatever way possible, out for yourself, that can get us into a whole lot of trouble, okay? But I like the airplane analogy better where, you know, when the oxygen masks come down, you're supposed to put your own on before you put on the mask of your child or your neighbor or something like that, because you're going to be of no service to them if you've already passed out, right? So it's like that. But this little voice that says that it's so selfish to be concerned about your own happiness, that's a Dharma student devil. You have to remember the enlightened self-interest that you're after, okay? Because your job is to become a helper as soon as possible. And, you know, helpers are happy people. So, and what's the proof of that? Well, when you're unhappy, isn't it all about you? I'm so unhappy. I don't have this. I don't have that. You know, it's and it's really hard. This is what they say about clinical depression. It's really, really hard to think about anyone else when you're in that state of dukkha, that really, really perverse state of dukkha, right? And, you know, this is the misguided pit. We do this in relationships all the time. I'm so unhappy. Aren't you going to do something for me? That's usually, even on the job, right? This job sucks. What are you going to do to make my job better? You know, aren't you going to pay me more? Aren't you going to give me more this, that, or whatever, right? It's, yeah. But here's the thing. No one can make you happy. It's not possible. It's not in their power. And we set people up. We set our jobs up. We set our partnerships up. We set our family up over and over and over again. Because they don't have that power. So of course they're going to disappoint you. Of course they're going to fail. Right? But see, they don't have the power to make you unhappy either. Because we like to blame our unhappiness on our job or on our partners or on our, right? Like we like to blame our unhappiness on anyone except ourselves. So nobody can hurt you unless you are hurt. No one can irritate you unless you're irritated. No one can anger you unless you're angry. You have to buy into it. Are they an amazing delivery system? Absolutely. And some delivery systems are better than others, but that's all they are, is a delivery system. And a mirror, right? They reflect back to us. Now, in a positive way, people do that too. And that's why we're so encouraged to have teachers, because you want to choose someone who reflects back to you your highest qualities. That's actually all they can do. Those qualities are not coming from them either. Okay? But in our pursuit of spirituality, we are wanting to take responsibility for all of that. You know, last class we talked about the morning lull, right? And the couch potato contemplation as part of a nice way to sandwich a daily practice. Well, the part of the morning lull was to count your blessings, right? To be grateful for all the things that are going right. Here's the extra bit. You can take credit for all of that too, right? Because if you really understand where those things are coming from, where the people you love most are coming from, where the things that make you happiest are coming from, right? It's easy. So take responsibility for that. But take it so that you can habituate yourself to taking responsibility for everything that comes to you. Everything. Yeah. But if you get good at taking credit for the good stuff, you will be less reluctant to take credit for the bad stuff. Because you're understanding where things are coming from. right? And we've been talking, I think, every single class, I tell you that really I have nothing more to teach you except to understand causality, to understand karma and the environment of emptiness that makes it possible. And that's really what this is also. And we didn't talk about it in the recent class, but we have definitely talked about this before, about the different worldviews, right? And I'm not going to review those right now, but even the karmic, the cause and effect worldview, the worldview of karma, which we say that's the one we believe in as Dharma students, as card-carrying Buddhists, that's what we say we believe in. It's hard to actually believe that 100% 24/7. It really is. It's hard to believe any of them or to follow any of them, but you have to. You can't cherry pick, and you can't use it when it's convenient for you. It's actually when it's inconvenient for us and we practice anyways, that's when we really make some growth. But, you know, it's why they call it a practice. It's not because you hear it once or twice or 70 times in this class that the world comes from you and not at you, that you'll finally go, right. Usually the right comes after the fact, but it's usually, usually the first thing, like in that meeting, when the accolades were being passed around, it did feel a little unfair, like that was the ripening that came up. But it's not about, in fact, there is no such thing as unfair. Like if you really think karma through, it's actually absolutely fair. It's just inconvenient sometimes, right? Yeah. So I've been referring to us as Dharma students, right? And we use Dharma in a very specific connotation. And we talk about the Dharma jewel and all of that. But the Dharma is a Sanskrit word. And actually, it can have many meanings. But in the root of it is dur. Is that how you pronounce it? Dur. And it means to hold up. It means like a solidity, a strength, right? And it's not actually particular. The word, it's just a word. It's not particular to any one religion. It's just a Sanskrit word. And you can interpret it as a Sanskrit word for the truth that works to make you a happier person. So it's a nice way to think of it. I like to think of it as dur, as something that has, something that can support you, right? So Vinaya, vowed morality, Dulwa in Tibetan, is really teaching us to not recreate the causes of suffering in our lives. Okay, so the relationship between Buddhist discipline, Vinaya, and Lord Buddha's teachings, this might be a homework question. The scriptures on Vinaya contain the essence of all of Lord Buddha's teachings. And the essence is basically ahimsa. Don't harm. Do not harm. That's basically the essence of Lord Buddha's teachings on vowed morality. They say the Vinaya Sutras can substitute for the physical Buddha himself. If you have the Vinaya, and I actually think if you have an understanding, but depending on what school you're in, they even think of the actual, Vinaya text, the object itself, as a representation of the Buddha being here. I like to think of it more as the understanding of it, because you don't need the object, but if you hold the realization in your heart. But regardless, it is the Vinaya, the discipline, the essence of the Buddha's teaching. His code of behavior is a substitute for and we're talking the historical Buddha. It's a substitute for the historical Buddha being here right now, which means he is here right now. Now, if you want to even flip that over to the wisdom side, which we've been saying forever, enlightened beings, there's no time, past, present, future, they're all times, and the Buddha is enlightened. Of course he's here. But that's a debate ground argument. The Vinaya argument is that wherever the Vinaya is, the Buddha personally is. Okay, I'm giving you lots of tools for your debates. Do you guys know what the 3 extraordinary trainings are? Tibor, you want to enlighten everybody?
Sure.
The extraordinary training.
Extraordinary training of ethical life.
Uh-huh.
Or
Morality.
But actually, it's more used as an ethical life.
Yeah.
And then the extraordinary training of meditative concentration. And then the extraordinary training of wisdom.
Yeah. So the extraordinary training of morality, we'll just keep it simple. The training of morality disciplines your body and your speech. Okay? The extraordinary training of concentration, as Thibaut just so beautifully said, disciplines your mind. And the extraordinary training of wisdom takes that discipline of your mind further to understanding how things fundamentally work. Understanding emptiness deeply. Understanding that every action has a reaction. And those are the 3 major components of any spiritual life. So the question is, how are those 3 related? Well, a good moral life is a precondition for concentration. Have you ever tried to meditate if you've actually got something on your conscience? Or actually, not even that bad. If you've had a knockdown, drag-out fight with your partner, say, before you sit down on your cushion, guess what you're going to be meditating on for the next half hour, right? Yeah. So, without the morality, without a, they give the analogy of moonlight reflected, actually the moon reflected on a lake. And if that lake is turbulent and muddy, right? Muddy meaning impure, like not clean. Then you're not going to be able to get a very good reflection because it's all going to be kind of roiling, right? When that all settles and the lake is still and the water is perfectly calm, concentration, right? Then the moon can reflect perfectly. Wisdom. So the deep, deep wisdom comes when your mind has such stillness, such clarity. So without morality, you can't get the concentration to the level that you need for this wisdom to shine through with that laser beam clarity that can cut through any of our delusions. Okay, so the Vinaya Sutra is a root text by Master Guna Prabha, and he lived approximately in 500 AD. And the commentary that we study is by Jetsun Kappa. Is the commentary. Pabonka might have done a commentary on Jetsun Kappa, but yeah. Jetsun Kappa did the commentary on the Vinaya Sutra by Master Guna Prabha. And Jetsun Kappa's commentary is called the Epistle on Ethics. It actually describes the motivation for ethics, for an ethical life. So the motivation to behave should not be for how we look to others. It shouldn't be because we want to look good. It shouldn't be for material gain. The real motivation actually needs to be born out of renunciation, a desire to escape our suffering life. So renunciation, and remember, renunciation isn't just giving up all your stuff. We've been through this argument before, right? It's not about giving up all attachment to everything. Because if it was, it could be really easy. We'll just pull up the truck, take all your stuff, and you'll be, right? It doesn't work that way. Renunciation is, yeah. Renunciation is the letting go of the suffering, the letting go of the attachment to the suffering. And that is the motivation for morality. Okay. Let me-
Excuse me, could you repeat the commentary and the author? Sorry.
Well, the sutra is by Master Guna Prabha.
Can you spell that?
Guna is Guna. Prabha is Prabha. From about 500 AD.
Okay, that's the only thing I got. So maybe,
Jetsun Kappa's commentary is called the Epistle on Ethics. And I don't have the exact here, but it has to have been between
1357 and 1419.
1357 and 1419.
Damn, we're
Woohoo. Sarah.
Yay, Sarah.
8 hours of meditation.
Yeah.
Okay,
think
what are
that
the
was
6
keyboard.
categories that Jetsun Kappa gives to explain the individual freedom vows? Well, individual freedom vows are the pratimoksha vows. Moksha means freedom or liberation, and prati means individual, one by one. These are the vows designed to bring the individual to freedom. Okay? So 6 categories. Jetsun Kappa divides the 1, basic nature. 2, basic nature of the vows. Okay, 2, divided into 8 types of pratimoksha vows, and they are full monks vows, full nuns vows, intermediate nun, novice monk, novice nun, lifetime lay man, lifetime lay woman, and one-day vow. Those are the 8 pratimoksha vows, which are the subset of number 2 of the 6 of Jetsun Kappa. Number 3 is individual description of the vows. Number 4 is who can take the vows. Number 5 is how you can lose the vows or break the vows. And number 6 is the benefits of keeping them properly. This is how he breaks down his commentary on the pratimoksha vows, okay? That's it in this course. It's just a laundry list, just an overview, because the actual ACI 9 will give you the long plain dance version of all of that.
What was number 6
Benefits of keeping them properly.
again?
Which is interesting because they usually give you the benefits up front, but in this one he gives it in number
At the end.
6. Yeah. Okay. So this is the pratimoksha, the basic layer of vows. 2 other layers of vows. One is the bodhisattva vows, which you're familiar with. We already did ACI 7. It's the guidance for anyone trying to live a life of altruism for others. And 2 are the tantric vows, which, by the way, are simply supercharged bodhisattva vows. And in some schools, when you get your tantric vows, they are the bodhisattva vows that you're all familiar with, believe it or not.
So how do you supercharge them?
Well, you have to be initiated. And I will tell you that they are not the vows in our lineage. You have to keep the bodhisattva vows and a whole bunch more, okay? But in certain tantras, which you will learn if you keep going on the course of study, you will learn that they are the core of some of even the tantric schools are divided into lower and higher schools, and in the lower schools they are the bodhisattva vows supercharged. Okay, so here's the essence of the pratimoksha vows by Jetsun Kappa. His definition basically is that you're turning away from harming others and its bases, turning away from harming others and its bases caused by an attitude of renunciation. So what that means, its basis, harming others and its basis, those are your mental afflictions. Okay? So you're turning away from harming others and the reason you would harm others, right? Your mental afflictions are what motivates you to harm others. And you turn away because of this attitude of renunciation, which means you've actually smartened up to the idea that why you suffer is from having harmed others in the past. That's how you renounce suffering, by renouncing the causes of suffering, right? Yeah. Okay, so a quick review of the 5 lifetime layperson's vows or precepts. I know many of you in the room already know these because you have them. 1, refrain from killing a human, and that includes fetus. 2, don't steal anything of value from someone else. And specifically, don't take anything that hasn't been given to you freely by someone you know who owns it and can give it away. Because that's a bodhisattva vow, not to accept something that's been stolen, right? They talk about it in terms of the Sangha jewel, I think, right?
Mhm.
Like anything that's been taken from a monastery or temple, and you know that it's been taken, then you don't accept it. Did you guys hear about the time Lamaji was offered a blessing bowl that he knew was...
I heard about it.
Yeah, but the thing is, the guy said, I know this has come wrongfully from a monastery, and I want to give it to you so that I can return it to its rightful, by giving it back to a monastery. And Lamaji said, had he not said that last part, he wouldn't have been able to take it. But because he said the last part of wanting to return it to a temple, that was then not stealing from, right? Like it's interesting. Okay. 3, not lying about your spiritual realizations and accomplishments, specifically about having a direct perception of emptiness if you haven't had it. 4, not committing adultery. And 5, no intoxicants. Because if you're intoxicated, you're more likely to break the previous 4, right? Okay. So these are sometimes called the lifetime layperson's vows. And sometimes they're called the 5 precepts. And the root text for this whole course of vows is called The Essence of the Ocean of Discipline. That's by Jason Kappa. The commentary was written by Master Quicksilver, Nilchu Dharma Bhadra. So the root text is really pithy. It just says, like, simply, don't kill, don't steal, etc. It's Nilchu Dharma Bhadra's commentary that goes into the specifics about what I was adding about don't kill a human or a fetus, and don't steal, which means don't take anything of value that is not freely offered to you, and like that, right? So, by the way, that fetus thing goes back to a Vinaya text that our lineage does follow, and it's called the Sarvastivada Vinaya. That's not a homework question, it's just Dharma trivia for those of you who are interested. But it's the Sarvastivada Vinaya is a Vinaya also followed by the Theravadan tradition. So the Theravadan tradition and our Mahayana tradition in the Geshe Michael Dalai Lama lineage follows the same Vinaya text for the text that's taught in the monasteries. Okay, because there's several Vinaya texts out there. Okay, did you notice that those 5-time layperson's vows are just specifics of some of the earlier moral guidelines that you've had? Like we've had the, no killing in other places, right? No harm. Yeah, but even before the pratimoksha, the non-virtues, the 10 non-virtues, yeah. So the laypersons is really like a fine-tuning, getting really specific, and making them more powerful too.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does that mean they've only, you said that Jason Kappas, they're from his Essence of Ocean of Discipline?
Oh, our explanation of them.
Our explanation?
Yeah, no, the vows go back to Lord Buddha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question with the meditation homework?
Mm-hmm.
It says to do a daily meditation, analytical meditation of the 5 vows and 1 additional part of the layperson's lifetime vows. So the 5 vows you're talking about are not what we just talked about? The 5 rules?
Sorry, repeat the question again.
Sorry. Okay. The 5 vows. Is that just the 5 rules we just talked about of the layperson's vows?
That's right.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
That's right.
Okay.
There is an extra one, though, isn't there, Tibor?
Don't break the refuge vow.
Refuge vows. That's right.
Okay.
It's an
About the
unspoken.
It's a 12.
Yeah. Like it's not an actual. It's not layperson's vow number 6. Like it is the 5 precepts, but there is this underlying. Just like in the Bodhisattva vows, there's this underlying vow that you will keep your 6-time book.
Mhm.
Because you won't break your Bodhisattva vows if you're keeping your 6-time book. But they don't make it into a formal vow you have to take. By the way, in the Tantric studies, it does become a formal vow, though. So you might as well practice now. Because once it's a habit, then it's really easy, right? It's when it's not a habit that it's harder. Okay. Let's see how we're doing here. Actually, good question about the Jason Kappa, Lord Buddha, like, who said what? Because the what Jason Kappa would be writing is actually a form of a commentary, like a commentary, and then Lucha Dharmavada would be doing a commentary on a commentary, right?
Okay.
The actual canon, the authoritative word directly from Lord Buddha, is called the Kangyur. In Sanskrit, it's called sutra. Sutra is a word like dharma. It can mean so many things. It can also mean the Brahman's cord, right? It can mean a whole lot. But anyways, Kangyur and sutra translate into each other. But Kangyur specifically is the authoritative word of Lord Buddha. And the commentaries are called the Tengyur. They are the collection of authoritative commentaries on the word of the Buddha. In Sanskrit, they're called shastras. And ultimately, in the Buddhist tradition, there is no difference between the word of Lord Buddha and the authoritative commentaries on the Buddha's word, because it had to be authoritative, it had to be accurate in order to get into the Tengyur. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we study Jetsun Kappa. And that's why we study Notre Dhammapada. Because they are authoritative commentaries. But I do have to tell you, one of the other, we always say the distinction between Hinayana and Mahayana is the motivation of altruism or not. But there's also a very distinctive difference in what is accepted as Buddhist teachings and what is not. And they are more interested in the Kangyur and not the Tengyur in that way. Like if you're a card-carrying Hinayana practitioner, like that is the other fundamental difference, is that they don't accept certain what we would consider an authoritative commentary to be authoritative. Like it's a difference of opinion, really, at that point. But that gets into the politics of the literature, and that really isn't the point. But it's interesting to note that. But here's the other thing, though. Lord Buddha did teach all of it, and the reason certain parts of the world are culturally Hinayana or Mahayana is really just indicative of how far the teachings got historically. So they all originated out of India, but only certain teachings made it so far. So the Mahayana teachings didn't make it to the countries that are strictly Theravadan or Hinayana. So it's, part of it is related to the geography and the migration of cultures back in the day. So we're very lucky, actually, 2,500 years later, to have authoritative commentary in our own language that we can understand, and not just literally translated that sounds kind of esoteric. Like, some of the translations that I've seen, especially if you're looking at PhD theses and all of this stuff, which I haven't delved into too much, but I've seen a few of them. And let me tell you, like, some of them are really hard to understand. They use, they use really, like, literal words for things, like,
That nobody else uses.
yeah, that doesn't really make sense in English, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a commentary that's handed to you. This is this beautiful thing about a lot of Geshe-la's translations. It's like he's just talking to you, right? And all of a sudden, it's like he's just talking to you about a pen. Happens to be the highest teaching on emptiness you could possibly get. But he's talking about a pen, right? And like that. So, but that's the other thing. Have I told you guys my story of when I first started to get really curious about emptiness in this lineage? And I was teaching, actually I was taking Tibetan Heart Yoga at the Old Three Jewels. This was before I started teaching. And we had a beautiful teacher with us from actually the Baba Hari Das lineage, the Salt Spring Island lineage. His name was Bryn. Is Bryn. Sorry if you're watching, Bryn. Bryn is still around, but he's not here. He's in Colorado. But anyways, Bryn was teaching, and for some reason, I ended up being the only student in this class, and he kept showing up anyways to teach me Tibetan Heart Yoga. But so we would also have these wonderful conversations, right? And he wasn't actually studying in the Geshe Michael lineage, but he was a very avid scholar and very highly university educated. I think he was into computers or something. Anyways, I had this conversation with him about really wanting to understand emptiness more. Silly me. But anyways, he gives me one day he shows up, and I don't know how long our yoga class was, but we ended up talking for quite a bit later. And he gives me this literally, these purple blocks that we have here? The book was that size, okay? And it was almost exactly that size. Maybe a little bit narrower vertically, but with thickness-wise. And the pages were like tissue paper. You know that type of paper? Have you ever seen that? Like in the Bible?
Like the Bible, yeah.
But, and it was a book on emptiness by Dr. Jeffrey Hawkins, who is a fantastic scholar. And
I have it.
yeah, of course you do. But
I'm
it was...
actually reading it right now.
Okay, well, I have read that thing from cover to cover, not understanding a word of it, okay? But I actually took it as a tapas. Like, there was something in me that needed to read this, and I read it. And at the same time, a Dharma friend, for some reason, and I don't even know why, because I was not having the emptiness conversation with her, but she hands me this book and says, Sherri, I think you'd like to read it. It was this thick, okay? It was bigger than this. Like, it was probably about that big. But seriously, yeah, that's about the size of it, okay? And it was by a lama, a Tibetan lama, on the exact same subject. And you know what? He covered perfectly in words I could understand. Now, that does not mean Jeffrey Hopkins is an amazing scholar, don't get me wrong, and has written amazing things. I think that was his PhD thesis, actually, and it's really it's a slog, okay? And he goes into the fine details of all the different schools and all of their, like, more schools than you've ever thought possible, right? And in words that are really, 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 like, you need a dictionary to understand the words that he's using and it's all in English. But but this other one, which was by a Tibetan Lama, was so brilliant and beautiful and really, and it wasn't by Geshe Michael, but it was that similar thing. And I had this realization that the most profound things, when taught by someone who has actually seen it, can be explained in the most simple way. Our challenge is to not dismiss things because they're simple or they're apparently, but the pen thing appears to be really simple. But if we really got it, it can take you there, right? So like that. Anyways, sorry, off-roading. Okay, Tangyur Kungyur, yeah. And you do have to test everything you learn, right, against your own experience. Test it like gold, the Lord Buddha said. You have to file it, cut it, test it in the fire and with a touchstone. By the way, ACI 15 is all about what the Buddha really meant. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous course on this, the ways to test it, the ways to test whether something is authoritative or not for you. It's also about, what the Buddha really meant. There are sutras, in the Kangyur, there are teachings where he says, yeah, everything exists. Everything exists. And then there's teachings like the Heart Sutra or the Diamond Cutter Sutra where he says, nothing exists. No eyes, no ears, no nose, nothing to see, nothing to smell, nothing exists, right? And then there's the famous mind-only school teachings where he goes, well, actually, and they say it's further details, like it's further explanations. It's because everybody freaked out at that second one. Well, not everybody. But it's like, it's the one where he says, well, some things exist and some things don't. Was he lying the other two times? Or, it's not like that. In fact, if you listen to any teaching, and I encourage you at some point to go back and listen to ACI you thought you were finished with, like a while ago, because you will hear it with fresh ears. And you will hear something in, like ACI 1, that went in ACI 1 when you were taking it, because you didn't have the ears to hear it then. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God. Like this is like the most profound aha moment. It's remarkable. They say that Lord Buddha didn't actually teach those three things at three different times. That he taught them all at the same time. It's just that the beings who got the teachings were the beings that could hear and could see, right? Yeah. And that's the thing, we have to remember that and actually this even happens at the regular school level. Lamaji told us, he was a university professor for many years. And he said that often he would teach an introductory course and say one thing, and then teach a postdoctorate, like an advanced course in the same subject, and say the total opposite. Because it was a different layer of understanding. And so it's not just in spiritual matters, right? This is what we call upaya in Sanskrit, skillful means. And it's a very, very crucial general principle. I remember writing this in my 6-time book for a long, long time. I need more skillful means. I still write that. But
It's a Tibetan word for that.
I don't have it here,
Isn't it
actually.
I'm forgetting.
I know it's upaya in Sanskrit. I seem to remember Sanskrit more, except for words like lelo and plaksam dum duck. But beyond that, I seem to remember the Sanskrit words more. So the upaya in this case is not to get too attached to your understanding at any given level, because as soon as you think you're comfortable, your teacher will pull the rug out from under you. If they're a good teacher, that's what they're supposed to be, pushing you to your edge all the time, right? And as you move up the rungs of the ladder, the lower rungs fall away. There's a really famous phrase about Dharma being like a boat. Did we talk about this in this course? where you take the boat of Dharma to cross over, but then at a certain point, you got to let go of the boat. Okay? So there are different things, and this is something to remember. Remember, this is a teacher training course too, right? All of you are in training to be teachers. Of course you are. And even if you're taking what you learn in this class and share it with someone who's interested at the coffee shop, right? You want to have your skillful means to the best of your capability and keep developing that. So you have to be sensitive to how you might have to say things differently to different audiences. That doesn't mean watering down what you know to be true, but it doesn't mean you hit people over the head with stuff. And in fact, there's a Bodhisattva vow about not teaching emptiness to anyone who's not mentally prepared, right? Who's not mentally prepared? I mean, you can only judge from what you know, to the best of your capability in the moment, with the proper motivation, right? But it's a very, very important principle. But it's a hard one because, you know, people think they have found a truth and it becomes their truth. And if you don't agree with it, you're wrong. And that's the start of a lot of wars, right? So, I mean, even His Holiness, I've heard him in conversation with scientists and he's been asked, well, what if we can prove blah, blah, blah? And he says, well, check back with me when you can prove it and you can convince me, right? But until then, it's like... But none of this being stuck, grasping to anything as being essentially anything, right? Like this is the biggest teaching we have, really. And remember what Maitreya told us to do. If you hear a teaching that you're not convinced of, or that you have a lot of questions about, don't judge it. Just put it on the shelf. Just be really, really, really careful about judging. And that is the biggest teaching that Lord Buddha said. Like, unless you're me or someone like me, meaning someone who's enlightened, do not judge another or else you will fall. Sometimes they say fail, sometimes they say fall, same thing, right? And you know, as you stick with this longer, you will hear your own teachers say contradictory things. I promise you will. And so you have to also take that under this wisdom when you hear it, right?
Like it just reminds me of this image where I think it was graffiti that said question everything and then underneath it said why.
I love it.
I think that was on Lama Maroon's Facebook page.
That's good.
Yeah, that's what the image that always pops in my mind.
Yeah. Well, there is also Lama Maroon has also talked about the lazy doubt, which is a type of unhealthy skepticism. Healthy skepticism is good. But unhealthy skepticism is when we doubt things just 'cause. It's like preschool mentality, right? I don't believe you. Why not? 'Cause, right? And you're not willing to do the work to find out why. It's about being comfortable with the uncertainty. Many, many teachers have taught that, not even just in this lineage, but it's really hard to be comfortable with uncertainty. And yet nothing is certain. We just think they are. Like, we think we have control over whatever, but we never do. Not really. Not really, right? Yeah. It's back to how we started class. Like, we think we want to be happy, but we don't even know where to begin, really, right? But back to that upaya, you will find that different people need to hear things in different ways. Even with the course that we just finished reviewing, the realms of existence, death in the realms of existence. Remember how I started that by saying there are some very literal descriptions in that, and it is a lower school teaching, but sometimes you need to be literal for people to get the point, right? But again, it's not to be attached to that. It's really what is best. What is best for the most amount of people, right? Like what is needed now. But it's all basically, all the teachings, we've said this before too, it's all basically from the same headquarters, right? Whether it's Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, all the isms and itties. Like His Holiness, right, says you can line them up this way, all of them. I don't know how many there are, many, many, many. But then you draw the line this way. There's only two. Those who are practicing and those who aren't. Right? So they're just all different branches, different divisions of the same company. They're all trying to sell you the same thing, how to be happier. But as long as they're teaching people the truth, the Dharma, in one form or another, don't judge it. Don't worry about it. But they do also say don't Dharma dabble. Like, check everything out that you need to, but then when you find one, stick with it. When you find one that speaks to you, stick with it. Yeah. Because it's like mixing medications, actually. If you're constantly hopping from one lineage to the next, one teacher to the next. I mean, yes, of course, like sample, try, test it all out, right? But when you're ready to get serious, then yeah, you have to follow your own truth with that. Okay. Ultimately, all of the spiritual lineages, the true ones, will be teaching people the real causes for happiness. And it's interesting. I'm going to be teaching the last karmic tune-up this Saturday for this year. We've been having them sort of once a month, where we've been building on Geshe-la's Diamond Cutter Institute Karmic Management series. And we've been working our way through just fine-tuning our karma, generally speaking, right? So we'll have our last session this Saturday if anyone wants to come. It'll be from 10 till noon. In the new year, I don't have an exact start date yet, but we're going to run another series of 3 on karma, but getting really specific. And getting specific about the real causes of love and money and health. The 3 biggies. But getting really, really, really specific with that. And not necessarily in that order. Although I was thinking if we start in January, maybe we'll do
Health. What?
I was thinking money.
Because everybody's
Everybody's
in debt.
broke. And then I was thinking
February
love
for
for February. And then health for spring. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll take a cue from the Vinaya and from Lamaji and from Geshe-la and actually for all of it there is I mean any of you who have been coming to the karmic tune-ups will know the general stuff and the general underlying things, but for example in February when we get into love I'll be pulling out more of the spiritual partnership stuff and specifics to the real causes for happiness in that. So there's an endless supply of of material that we can work with. So I'm actually going to stop there because we do have one more full class to review the rest of this course, and I think I've off-roaded a fair bit today. I'm sorry I didn't give you a dance break, but I've been really working to try and get us out by 9 o'clock, and it is 8 minutes to. So it's yeah. Any other questions? By the way, thank you to everyone who's been helping and continuing to participate in the Great Pledge. We did our second 8 hours of meditation on Saturday. So we are now 2/3 of the way through our 24 hours, and we are 90% towards our goal.
Yeah.
So we have $1,500 more to raise to hit our target, and we have one more session on December 21st to complete it by. So thank you to everyone, and we do still have that last stretch to go, so keep spreading the word, and I just want to congratulate everyone who's been participating, and thank you so much for all of that. It's been really, really cool. This Saturday we had some new people too that I've never seen here before. I think a couple of them have dropped into yoga class or maybe Wednesday night, but it was great because we had 2 new people who stayed for the entire 8 hours, and yeah, it's really, really sweet. And I've also been hearing stories that there's sort of concentric circles going out where people in our lives are starting to meditate more than, or who had maybe stopped meditating or like getting back into it as moral support and stuff like that. So it's been really sweet to watch the ripples go out. So thank you all for that. So lots to dedicate about. Sashi Jikshin Metokdram Rira Blingshin Yande Gyalpadi Sange Shindu Mite Uwargi Drokun Namdak Shingla Chuparsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami Kiwadi Kewokun Sunam Yashe Totokshi Sunam Yashe Lejunwe Damba Kuni Topasho. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And remember, Lamajan is teaching meditation class on Wednesday nights.
Right,
And, yeah, and taking a page from where Doug Meinhof left off with the 4 applications of mindfulness.
Mindlessness. That's what. No mindfulness.
Depends which way you look at it.
I thought I heard Nishi saying it was like an acid trip today. I'm like, whoa. I can't remember what she said, but it was not acid trip.
Breathe, Sarah,
Yeah,
breathe.
Something weird is happening.
Oops. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.